Hello, my old friends, and welcome to the newest Whiskey Amateur Class episode. In this video, I would like to talk about the 7 most important takeaways from my whiskey journey so far. This video might be a tiny bit longer than usual, but believe me, if you watch till the end and you pay attention, I'm pretty confident that you will look differently on this topic, on whiskey in general. So I would like to talk about 7 topics, and the first one probably is the most important one or the most interesting one, and it's being biased from whiskey, being biased by looking at the bottle. So why is this important? Unconsciously, when we see a bottle, we see the price, we see the color, we see the age statement, and we are biased right away. We are not even aware, but our mind is subconsciously making already a decision, making up facts and, starts to develop thoughts, how this whiskey could be. And this is something where you have to pay attention. And this was also a big learning for me because, you look at the whiskey and you are like, oh, this has a very bright color, it's pretty light. It must not be that good, compared to a whiskey, which is really, really dark. So let me clarify here something. Color is not indicative at all, So you might deduct 1 or 2 information, for example, the cask or, the length of the maturation. But since in Scotland and Ireland, distilleries are allowed to color their whiskey, yes, you heard that right. You cannot really draw a conclusion from that. So pay attention to this and don't be misled by the color. The second is the price tag. So automatically when you see a bottle that is pretty expensive, you are like, wow, that must be good. But it doesn't have to be the case. Price is really complicated. Price is driven by several factors, and I'm going to talk about price at the 6th point. Then you can be also biased from the label, from the marketing. So take this one. You see, it's has a very old school and very interesting label, and you might think, oh, this could be something cheap, or this could be something that I don't like. But why would you assume that? So long you haven't tasted it, you haven't tried it, you shouldn't be drawing conclusions. Okay. And also, for example, the age statement. So you see that, okay, this is 18 years old or 20 years old or whatever. And you are like, oh, that's very old. So that must be very good. This is why I picked this bottle today. This is a super interesting bottling. So first of all, you see the color, it's very light. Then second, you see the age statement, which is 5 years old. And also the label, it's it's a bit unorthodox. And then you might think, okay, that's something I probably wouldn't like or I just don't understand. And this bottle is just fantastic. I'm having so much fun with this one. I really like it because this is something special. And if you don't know this, you're going to skip this bottle, but people are actually dying to get one of this. Okay, but let me move on. So the second point is drinking with awareness. And this is something that I learned over the course of the years, that in order to advance in your whiskey journey, you really have to pay attention to what you are drinking, So this is why when I'm trying something new or something very interesting or very special, I'm taking the time, I'm just on my own, quietly, not talking to someone, not eating, not watching TV or anything like that. I'm spending time. I'm spending actually quality time with that spirit, because in order to explore it and in order to learn something from it, you really need to drink it with awareness. So pay attention to it, spend some time with it, and really consciously focus on what you are drinking, because this is the only way that you can advance and you can, get to the next level when it comes to spirits. But this is actually true for pretty much everything in life if you think about it. So the third point is the alcohol volume. Most whiskeys, at least the cheap whiskeys, the supermarket whiskeys that you can find everywhere, are bottled with 40%. Do you think this is a coincidence? Well, it's not. 40% is the minimum minimum that it's defined by law, you know? So in order to be called whiskey, it has to be bottled at least with 40%. But whiskey usually, I mean, the better one, or the more sophisticated whiskeys are bottled absolutely with a higher strength. And just to give you an example, this bottle is bottled with 48%. So the 48% is much higher than the legal minimum. And one takeaway, what I learned during the years is that the aromas and flavors are in the alcohol, not in the water. So in this case, 48% is the alcohol and 52% is basically water. Of course, you cannot separate them, but the alcohol carries, these aromas and flavors in a super concentrated way. So actually what you want to see is a higher strength. But it's pretty tricky because this is a double-edged sword. So the higher the strength, also the more difficult to consume it, the more difficult to enjoy it. So in my opinion, there is basically an optimum between, let's say, 46 and 50 or 52. But this really depends because, the cask strength whiskeys that can go until 60%, for example, I've tasted some that you could drink neat. But that has to be a masterpiece, in order to be consumed and enjoyed at 60%. So what you have to observe here is that a well-made whiskey will also work with a higher strength. And those aromas and those nice intensity will be carried by the alcohol, okay? So distilleries most of the time want to find an optimum that can be 46%, some say it's around 50, and the cask strength whiskeys are definitely not for beginners, but if your palate is trained, then you can enjoy 50 plus ABV whiskeys with ease, okay? So don't go for the smooth whiskeys or, that are easy to sip, because actually a well-made whiskey will be also easy sipping and will work perfectly at a higher strength, okay? The fourth point is the importance of casks. So it's really hard to quantify, how much influence does a cask have. If you want a rule of thumb, head distillers say it's around 60 till 75 or 80%. So let's say 2/3 of the flavors, 2/3 of the aromas come from the maturation, from the casks. So this is why it's super important to understand the importance of the casks. And here, let me give you just some examples. So there's gonna be a huge difference, for example, between American oak, white oak, and European oak. Okay, so for example, the American oak carries a lot of vanilla or a lot of honey notes. That's something that you get in your whiskey when you are drinking a whiskey that was matured in American oak casks. And on the European side, the European oak tends to be much more spicier, carries a lot more tannins, much more dryness, So it's really interesting to know exactly what kind of cask that was. Also, the size. It's pretty important because it does matter whether it's a small cask, like, 50 liters or 125 liters, or a big one, like a sherry butt with 500 liters, or a Madeira drum with 600 or above 600 liters. Although, be aware, the cask cannot be larger than 700 liters. That's also defined by law. So the size will make a huge difference because the contact between the alcohol and the surface, the cask, the wood, it's going to be different, this ratio. Also, you can reuse casks. So if you are producing a bourbon in the US, you are allowed to use a cask once. But Scotch whiskey or Irish whiskey, you can reuse your casks. So it's pretty important to see and to know whether it's a first fill cask, so it's been used for the first time, or it's a refill cask that has been used twice or 3 times even. That will also have a huge impact. And finally, the previous content, because in Scotland they are using a lot of sherry casks, so casks that held sherry initially or originally, but there are also wine casks. There are also rum casks or cognac casks or brandy casks or beer casks or tequila casks. There is really a plethora of different types of spirits that you can put into the cask, and that will also have a huge influence on your Scotch whiskey afterwards. So what I'm trying to say here is that casks are essential to understand, and always know for sure and exactly what type of maturation that was, because that way you can develop and educate yourself in a meaningful way. Point number 5, and this is probably the most important one, at least for me, and also the biggest topic, and that is judging too quickly. Many people, if not most, really do the mistake that they try something and they judge right away. So my suggestion, my advice for you would be to first drink 2-3 trams. Not on the same evening, but on different days, First, try to understand what you are drinking. Try to get to know the whiskey first, on different occasions. Because you won't believe it, but the mood, the mood and the setup and basically how you feel will have a huge influence on how you taste the whiskey. If you had a bad day, if you had a rough day, it's gonna taste a bit differently, okay? Or if you are super happy, if you are excited, again, it will have a different taste. Sounds crazy, right? But try it for yourself. Also, what many people rush is that they don't let it sit, Usually I pour a dram like this and I let it sit for 15 minutes or so, because it needs some time, it needs some time to get some air, start to oxidize, and it will open up beautifully. That first sharp alcoholic note on the nose will disappear after some time, and only those wonderful aromas will be there. And this is why you really have to let it sit. It's not like you open the bottle, you pour it, you drink it, and you are judging it right away. No, that's really like a rookie mistake. Don't do that, especially if it's an older whiskey or if it's something special. Take your time, all right? So to conclude this point, you also have to ask the question, if you like a whiskey, why do you like it? This is a super difficult question. So if you say, wow, I like it pretty much, then tell me why. Why do you like it that much? If you can describe it, that's something. If you can describe it, then I can tell you that you are advancing in your journey. This is how you will develop a taste. This is how you will you will know, okay, this is something I would try and this is something that I usually don't like, But for that, you have to practice. You have to practice a lot. You have to train your palate. And once you practice and train your palate, over time, you will be able to spot quality and to differentiate between very good quality and average whiskeys. And this is the art. This is where you want to get to see and to find the quality on your own. So not be biased, but you really to arrive up to a point where yourself, you can tell that, okay, this is a quality whiskey, and also there, what kind of quality that is. This is my mission, basically. This is what I'm really trying to do every week, to test myself and see whether I can spot quality. Point number 6, price and value. So here, let me just clarify that price, it's not the same as value, you know. Value is something intrinsic, and price is something that your local retailer is asking, okay? So you have to understand that value is pretty much subjective, okay? So a whiskey will mean different things to the different people, okay? So it could be the case, and it will be the case, that I'm telling you that this is a superb whiskey and you just won't like it that much, you know? And this is why value is subjective, and it's really up to you. It depends on you. How much can you bring out from that bottle? How much can you bring out from that expression, you know? And this is why I'm coming now to the prices, that above a certain price level, it doesn't really make sense for beginners to buy something, okay? Because you won't be able to appreciate, and you won't be able to pick up that premium, you know, that's on top on the average whiskey. And this is why I truly understand why people are giving out much more money for a bottle than the others, you know. Of course, there's a limit above which doesn't make any sense, coming to that in a second. So this is why I would suggest you, and there's a video on this topic on my channel, that around 40 to 50 euros, that's really the sweet spot for beginners. That's where you can already get quality malts, and you are not overpaying for anything, you know. So for the 40, 50 euros area, you can get these 10, 12, 14-year-old nice single malts. Start there, enjoy it, and once you are ready to move on, you can pay more, you can give more for a bottle, you know, once you can appreciate it and understand it. Now, when it comes to price, you know, there's also a huge factor. The age is a huge factor. And here I'm going to show you a chart. So observe that as the stock matures, as the whiskey matures, you know, the whiskey evaporates, the alcohol evaporates. So after 18 years, there's going to be much less in the cask as in the first year. And this is why whiskey becomes more expensive, because the quantity is just less, okay? So automatically, you know, just by doing the math, you have to sell it for more. But also through this aging process, the whiskey becomes most of the time better, all right? Better is, by the way, a silly term, but it's going to be more layered, it's going to be more mature, it's going to have more aromas and more flavors. There are exceptions, but most of the time. And this is why you have to pay there a premium. But whether you can spot that, you know, it's really up to you. So just to clarify, let me give you here an example. 12-year-old Bunnahabhain costs around 40 euros or 45. And the 18-year-old Bunnahabhain costs around 130, 140 euros. So it's 3 times the price, you know. The age difference is just 6 years, but the whiskey is 3 times more expensive. So does it make sense to buy the 18-year-old? Well, it really, really depends. For me, I am more than willing and more than happy to pay that price. But for you, I can't tell, you know. I have to see first where do you stand? Where are you in your journey? All right? But as a rule of thumb, you know, and as just to make it clear, it won't mean that the 18 years old is 3 times as good, all right? It won't be 3 times as good, not even twice probably. You cannot quantify like that, okay, the price is 3 times as much and then it must be 3 times as good. No, simply not. The price goes exponentially after a year. And here I'm going to show you another chart. So on this chart, you will see that it increases exponentially because there's just a few, much less whiskey there, little whiskey there, So automatically supply and demand, the whiskey is going to be more expensive. So this is why you really have to understand a bit the dynamics, not just so that you are not really confused or you don't overpay, so you really have to avoid that. So I wanted to clarify this. Let me check. Yes, maybe one more point. So in my personal opinion, there is a linear relationship until like 200 euros. So the marginal value, the added value increases as you spend more, all right? So until 200 euros, if you pay more, you will most of the time get a better whiskey. But up above 200, it's a gray zone, it becomes very complicated. And if you don't have a clue, if you don't know what you're buying, you can easily overpay for something, okay? And this is why I really don't suggest so that you go to that price segment, because sometimes it will be better, but in my experience, most of the time it won't. All right. So for me personally, the sweet spot right now is somewhere around 80 to 120. So between this segment, I think you can get a lot and you won't overpay. And you will get a premium compared to the standard range, all right? So that was point number 6. And finally, number 7, and this is also important, number 7 is that a good whiskey is best enjoyed in company. So you can have the nicest bottles, you can have the nicest whiskeys, but you'll enjoy it the most when you are sharing with someone who has also a passion for whiskeys and who can also really has an opinion and can, add value to the conversation. So share the whiskeys, even if it's expensive or super rare. Share with your friends, share with those who appreciate that. And those are lovely discussions. You can learn a lot. You can develop yourself this way. So to sum it up, these were my 7 most important takeaways from my journey, at least so far. So I hope that you will also think about this. I hope that I could give you some new ideas. And I always tell you, if you need a recommendation, if you want to chat about whiskey and so on, text me. Let's talk about it. Let's have a dram together. And I wish you good health, Slandra, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye bye.